Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Real inspiration for real innovators. If you're looking for innovation and leadership transformation, your journey starts now.
Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Born. Hey, I would love for you to leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts, and I want to welcome the over 80 countries listening right now. Welcome. Well, my guest today is Mary Beth Coke, and here's what I'm excited about. We've never had a topic like this on our podcast. We're talking about your masterclass in banking. So Mary Beth joined Regions Bank in 2023, and she serves as the district director for Georgia and the Carolinas regions and is a leading regional financial institute, and they serve people in business, which is why this topic is going to be so important today for you. They work all throughout the Southeast, the Midwest area, Texas. And so when she moved into her role, she came from a background that she's going to share with you in just a little bit. But there's kind of two lessons here as we jump into this content. One is I want all of us to get leveled up. So a masterclass in how we think about the work we do, how we think about how banking can help the work we do as entrepreneurs, small business owners, and even mid-sized business owners. And so I'm excited for her deep wealth of expertise and her background that she's going to bring to the conversation today. Welcome to the podcast, Mary Beth.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I want to just start out by saying, let's talk a little bit about your background in banking, because I would love to know, how did you get your start? How did you find a knack for what you're doing today?
It's funny. I still have a hard time thinking of myself as a banker per se. I feel like I just have a wonderful time getting to learn about companies and business owners and what their goals are. But I actually started in banking right out of college. I went through a training program, which I think are such vital parts of what banks still offer for just newly graduated college students to really get some fundamentals before they're starting on their journey in banking, and give you some important tools that you'll continue to use throughout your career. So I run a commercial bank geography with Regions, as you said, but that wasn't exactly where I started. I started in more of a corporate and investment banking team and built some really important skills around deals, transactions, diligence, the working with sponsors when they were considering buying businesses from founders or buying businesses to add on to platform companies that they already had. And that was really such a developmental part of my journey and career to get those fundamentals around, what makes a business work? What makes it successful? What does it look like as a component of the overall industry that it's part of? And what does it look like versus the peers that it's competing against? And so that was really a significant portion of my career where I had a lot of really inspirational leaders that saw things in me that continued to push me into trying different sectors. I specialized for a while within healthcare, which was a lot of fun, and also was a generalist across sort of different industries and getting about an inch deep and a mile wide. I then moved from what was really more kind of credit focused. And when I say credit from a banking perspective, that means all of the digging into the financials and understanding the sustainability of earnings over a future period of time based on what's happened in the past. But then I moved into a product role. And as folks listening are aware, banks have a number of products and solutions that we offer our clients. And there are experts behind the scenes that really understand and just work with those products, making sure that we're delivering really efficiently to our clients. And so honing my skill set in a specific product was a unique experience where the relationship piece still wasn't necessarily at the forefront in terms of living with the client through a life cycle. It was more transaction based. So there was an acquisition or there's a capital project, some type of outlay that was requiring some debt financing that I got to plug into. So when I think about that those two legs of the stool, what I was missing was really the client-facing relationship piece that I referenced just a moment ago. And that's really what leads me to where I am today, which is leading a team of relationship managers that cover the Carolinas and Georgia. We're working with founder-owned businesses, everything from small business all the way through to middle market sized companies, and supporting them along the way in their journey. And that has been really so rewarding for me to see how a bank and a really good strategic partner within a bank can support companies through their life cycle. And really, I lean on so many of those skills that I've developed over the last 20 years that, you never know when you're going to need to rely on those sort of deal specific skills or transaction or product or just awareness that come up. So having a good foundation is very important, but you can't lose sight of the value that you provide and stability and advice to clients, which is what leads me to where I am today.
Well, I love that you said stability and advice. And I think that for founders and small business owners, that is the challenge. There's such complexity out there when you've launched something, you've gotten traction on it, and now you're thinking, okay, I'm at a point of inflection in my business, but I don't know a whole lot about banking and finance, and I don't know what to do next. And so really that's where I believe your team comes in. And so I'd love to know, what are some of the key insights that people are navigating that come to you? What are some of the key challenges they're navigating? What are maybe a couple of use cases of why they may knock on your door for help?
My biggest piece of advice, and this is very simple in my mind, but oftentimes hard to do, is to find someone that can be a trusted partner to you. And as a business owner, I've witnessed over my career how those trusted partners can come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. It could be an accounting firm, your accounting firm that you're relying on, a CPA. It could be the attorney that's helping you put your documents together for the business. Those type partners are critical, but I also think that there's an opportunity for a bank to also serve a role that can marry a multitude of aspects together for a business owner. And I know it doesn't seem as on the surface, you're like, a bank? I mean, don't you just need a bank to open accounts and give you a loan when you need it? Well, sure. I mean, you can look at a bank in that way, but I think banking has evolved to such a strategic resource for business owners to tap into that can really provide so much more to a business owner from, okay, let's think about your personal wealth. What are you doing related to tax strategies or planning for the future? You can think about just from the partner perspective, there's so many resources that we could provide as it relates to helping. Maybe you don't have an accountant or CPA that you feel comfortable with, or maybe you need to scale up and you need someone to give you that feedback to say, you know what, your business has grown, but you haven't necessarily modified who's supporting you. And you need to sort of think about, is it time for an audit? Is it time, or you need to get a quality of earnings? Maybe you're thinking about an exit in the future. A bank that really can come to the table, not with a product or a solution to what your immediate need is, but really get to know you, get to know your business, and then be that sounding board to you. I think that would be what I would share from my perspective, that I see that business owners really need to hone in on and embrace without fear of, and this I think stops many, is just the cost. Right? Well, isn't there an embedded cost in that? And isn't there going to be, this is going to be dilutive to my earnings if I'm, using this banking partner for all these things. Most of what I do is meet with people and it doesn't cost a thing, right? We will come and talk and we will have conversations, Sure. I mean, do we want to be able to provide some of our services to business owners? Absolutely. I mean, that's what we're in business to do, the same as the business owner that's in business but wants to continue to grow. But I think that getting hung up on, well, I don't even want to ask because maybe I don't understand, or maybe this is going to erode some of my margin. I think if you take the broader scope perspective of, well, what does this actually unlock for me for the future? How can being more efficient with how I pay vendors, or what method I use to pay vendors, what is that going to do for you over the long term? And really thinking about it in those sort of that very broad perspective certainly is where a trusted partner that you can find within banks to help you through that. So I think those are a few of my thoughts, in addition to there's so many wonderful people out there that are wanting to serve. Don't be afraid to ask. I think sometimes companies they're like, no, I don't think a bank wants to talk to me, or I don't know that I'm quite where I need to be to have that conversation. I can assure you, we would love to have that conversation and that dialogue. It doesn't really matter where you are in the cycle.
Well, I love what you said, which it costs nothing to have a conversation. And oftentimes I think we do get into this thing of like, well, I don't know enough to sit down and have the conversation. But essentially, every time in every conversation you have, you grow your knowledge in some way, shape, or form. And so I would say it costs you too much not to have the conversation, even if all you do is get some understanding, learning, and it helps you to chart a path for the future. And so much of the work, that we do with clients is very similar, Mary Beth, to what you do, which is we sit down and help them chart a course for the future. And so I love that you said it doesn't cost anything to do that, to learn, to get that knowledge, to have a conversation. And this is the area where I find most entrepreneurs wait a little bit too long to understand what their options are. And I think options are so important in business. They give us clarity. They help us, kind of get a specific direction that we're going to head in. And so it doesn't really cost anything to sit down and have a conversation. So often I talk to founders and business leaders who find it really hard to move themselves out of the center of their operations in order to get a higher vantage point on what they should be doing. And I feel like these conversations are a very powerful part of that. Let's kind of switch gears here a little bit and let's talk about kind of the different seasons of a business life cycle and how they might impact your banking strategies, right? So all seasons are not created equal. We have to do different things. If we even think about it like the seasons outside, right? Like we have to do different things in different seasons, and the same applies to our business. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that and what are some things they should be thinking about within their business.
It's so important to evolve with your business and make sure that your not only banking partner and solutions, but anyone that's supporting you along the way is also evolving. To your point, not all seasons look the same. And I think, if we start with maybe just startup, let's start at the beginning, and you think about you're trying to get an idea into commercialization and production, and you're evaluating how to do that. There are resources to help with creating a business. I think about oftentimes the importance of SBA, and that's that's Small Business Administration, for those of you that may not be familiar, but they fund so much within our communities for the sole purpose of ensuring that someone that wants to be an entrepreneur, that has a fantastic idea, has the resources to help them at no cost, by the way. Kennesaw State, Georgia State, University of Georgia, so many of our universities right here in the metro Atlanta area where we sit, but then all across the country have small business development centers that can help you create a business plan, think about your financials, and think about also how you're going to help your business come to reality via potentially there's some debt financing that's needed. So I think not limiting yourself to just having to do it and figure it out on your own in every cycle would be a key point to remember. But even at the very beginning, and your growth needs are going to be different in the beginning of the creation of your business. And many banks are not going to feel as supportive when you're starting off. You need accounts, you need a way to pay people and to be paid. So think about a bank from that perspective, and there can be efficiencies that pay rewards in the overall scheme of things when you're starting out in that environment. But many times without actual revenues and generation of earnings and cash flow, it's going to be hard for a bank to be supportive in that environment. So you may look to growth capital or equity. You may go to partners like venture capital. But then there's also solutions within SBA that can support startups from the very beginning. So I would encourage at this early stage, think about, what do I have that I can leverage to push me forward, and don't go it alone. And then I think as businesses evolve from that startup to maybe more growth, and growth stages can come at any part of the cycle. You could be stable and then growing, and then stable and growing. You can go back and forth, and you can decide to exit and you're growing before you exit. There's so many different aspects of growth. And what I would say about that is ensuring that you have a partner with financing that growth that supports your end goal without diluting or restricting or causing you to potentially give up what you may want to ultimately do in the future. So start with the end in mind and thinking about, who you're bringing alongside you. It may just be you. It may be friends and family. It may be a bank. It may be all of the above. I've seen many of those play out. But think about where you ultimately want to go. I think that's important to always keep in the back of your mind when you start a business or you're an entrepreneur and your business is now successful and growing. Well, what's next? Mm-hmm. You have to innovate and think, okay, here's where we are today, but what does the future hold? So potentially bringing on a partner that could own some of the business, but you still control most of the business. So that you can think about that as minority equity. That's an incredible way to really get a jolt of capital to grow that business in ways that's exponential to what you could do on what we in banking say on an organic basis, which means just continuing to do what you've done and grow incrementally over time. But also you want to weigh with a trusted partner, what does that mean? What does that mean for me when I finally decide in the future that maybe I want to exit? And it's often a discussion that we have with business owners where you think about, well, I don't want to bring on a partner because I want to own the entire business. But the reality is you could actually bring on a partner, grow the business at a rate that's going to be far above where you would on your own. So when you do exit, you're actually not giving up anything. You potentially are going to have a much bigger pie for which you're going to be able to reap those rewards. And so that amount of growth equity that you brought on may not necessarily impact you. But I think, as I sort of think about one of the things that I see most often, so a business use case potentially for life cycle, is not business owners not evolving leadership, teams, accounting functions, finance functions, ERP systems,
yes,
you name it, with their business. And that can truly come to create inefficiencies that are very hard to overcome in the future. And I think as I engage with companies, I try to ask questions that allow me to better understand where they are and where they want to go, and then give feedback around, well, you may want to consider, as an example, many businesses feel like it's a safer solution from a financing perspective to have multiple bank relationships. So they may have 5 different banks that they work with and have 5 different lines of credit and deposit accounts at 5 different banks. And they feel that's a safety net because they're going to get the best rate from each of the banks and they're putting it all together. That is a very big drain on your finance professionals to manage that number of banks. Yes. And the reality is, and we know this in banking, is that when you go to one bank and then you tell each of the banks to, okay, give me the best deal, you're actually now creating a competitive process, which makes the company the winner, because you're the one that's going to benefit from putting that competitive dynamic in play. And you've narrowed it down to one partner that can still utilize multiple banks. You're just dealing with one person at an institution that then can manage the rest of the bank relationships, that really creates efficiencies for your team and flexibility within your capital structure. So when we talk about capital structure, that means how you're financing yourself. So you've got cash and you've got debt and you've got equity. And then you think about, okay, well, what is my mix of that? And when you bring more banks in under one, call it a leader bank, to manage that process, you've all of a sudden created so much efficiency for yourself and significant capacity to continue to grow. I find that discussion is a very hard one for business owners to evolve, particularly when they've grown beyond where they started. And it's hard to see, well, this is the way we've always done it. Right. And it's a reason to really partner with people that can help you think strategically, someone who doesn't necessarily have skin in the game in terms of, they're not your essential management team, and, find some outside party to give you some of that unsolicited advice. I mean, I'd be happy to do it, but sometimes I'm not the one that can be heard the loudest. So I think finding a true board of directors, whatever that means, I think it can mean a lot of things to different business owners, but really finding some outside opinion that can give you advice and really push you when you need to be pushed to help evolve through the different stages of the life cycle. And then the last point is just, if you're at a stage that it's time to exit, that means move on to whatever the next chapter is in your life. It is imperative to plan for it. The biggest mistake I see business owners making is taking that phone call and getting the number that makes them excited to sell their company, and they don't have someone to go alongside them to ensure that they're getting the best price, because trust me, the first phone call is not ever going to be that one. You should absolutely find someone to be an advisor to create that competitive process again, to make sure you're getting the best price, but then not planning for what that means for your family and yourself for the future. It is a lifestyle change to do that for yourself and your company, and you have to plan. You have to think about, okay, what are the tax implications of this as an individual? And that planning can take time, significant time. So if you are considering selling your business, it's never too early to plan ahead, and use wealth strategists, use estate planners, use investment banks, use trusted advisors to help you navigate that, and understanding that it should be a long process because you want it done right.
So good. This is so good. Thank you. You have given us our masterclass in banking. And again, this is high level, so dig in deep. Reach out to Mary Beth. We'll go ahead and put her LinkedIn in our show notes so that you have access to her. But this is what it's all about. As you're thinking about how to build your business, as you're thinking about how to lay out the path and the steps forward, don't do it alone. Don't do it in the dark. And I think that the wisdom here applies across the board. If you run a business, it's how you should be thinking. It's strategy behind what you're doing, and really beginning with the end in mind, which is so powerful. Mary Beth, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Natalie. I've very much enjoyed it.
Well, to our listeners, thank you for joining the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Remember, don't just get out of the box, break the box and set it on fire. Let's go transform something.
Thank you for joining us for the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our show on iTunes. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Innovation Meets Leadership, and visit our site at innovationmeetsleadership.com for more innovation resources.